Remember slasher villains? Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers? It's been a while since someone new joined the pack, partly because the genre got so crowded, then turned on itself, leaning into satire and parody, the self-aware slasher popularized by Scream, until 2008, a savior came. A savior named Art the Clown. Like most saviors, he flew under the radar at first. He debuted in writer-director Damien Leone's short film, The Ninth Circle, where he was in more of a supporting villain role, basically a henchman for witches. Then he took the main slot in the 2011 short, Terrifier. Both shorts were included in the anthology movie All Hallows Eve, and Art was part of the wraparound story connecting them all. He made such an impression, and Leone knew he was onto something. Finally, in 2016, Art got his own feature, whose title is borrowed from the short, Terrifier. Before we continue, a disclaimer. Many of the images in Damien Leone's films are so graphic, merely glimpsing them would risk destroying your mind. For your own safety and protection, many of the images will be heavily blurred or put in black and white or both. In some cases, the material is so graphic, we have no choice but to instead show you public domain Coco the Clown cartoons. Enjoy. I hear a lot of polarized opinions on the movies, but I fall squarely on the side of I love these movies. To me, they feel like someone studied the hell out of all the classic slasher movies. They figured out what works, broke it down to a formula, then executed that formula, not only as best they could, but also while pushing every variable to its max, something Leone is uniquely qualified for because he doesn't just write and direct, but got his start in makeup effects. For Terrifier 1 and 2, he led the effects himself, and although he handed off those responsibilities on 3 once they had a bigger budget, he still got his hands dirty, and I think having an eye for effects, knowing what's possible and how, helps him to be more imaginative in all the carnage we see on screen. Part of the slasher formula is getting us to care about characters, then telling us the danger that awaits them. Well, this isn't just any danger. When you cross Art, you enter a world of pain you never thought you could imagine. A world where, even if you survive the battle, you will be forever scarred, physically, mentally, spiritually. When Art stabs you, he stabs your soul. In my retrospective on the series before Terrifier 3 came out, I talked about how Art felt like a monster even compared to monsters. He is sadistic in the way that he doesn't just kill, but draws it out, and truly enjoys the pain he inflicts. But when he's backed into a corner, slasher rules be damned, he'll pull out a gun. Art meeting the classic slasher villains would feel like Cartman meeting Bart Simpson. Art shows the others what it really means to be a bad guy.
I'm a pretty bad kid.
Really? What's the worst thing you've ever done?
I stole the head off a statue once.
Wow, that's pretty hardcore. Jeez. That's like this one time when I didn't like a kid, so I ground his parents up into chili and fed it to him.
I was a fan of Terrifier, an even bigger fan of Terrifier 2, where Leone only improved as a filmmaker, bringing more of a story and deeper characters into his funhouse of horrors. When he made the first one, it was while working other jobs, but for Terrifier 2, it was his full-time focus. When he wasn't writing the script, he was reading books about screenwriting and improving his craft as much as possible, and I think it shows. And then he gave me what I never knew I wanted. The Terrifier Christmas. That's right, Terrifier 3 is a Christmas horror movie. They say the holidays start earlier every year. Christmas is encroaching on October. Spooky season. Well, don't worry. If Santa showed up early and you want to teach him a lesson, I've got the cure for you right here. His name is Art the Clown. It's Christmas Eve and Art, now dressed as Santa, visits a family, eats the cookies and drinks the milk they've left out for him. Really, this is kind of a tame start for a Terrifier movie. Hold on, I might have skipped something here. Oh, okay. He also murders and dismembers the entire family with an axe. Once he puts the axe in the mother's head, "Oh Come All Ye Faithful" kicks in, and that is when Art enjoys the plate of cookies, before washing and placing that plate gently on the dish rack. This follows the slasher formula of starting with a kill unrelated to the main character, a way to ensure the proceedings are exciting from the start. and it previews the danger awaiting our characters. In case you forgot, it reminds you that Art the Clown is a jerk, a big meanie. Though it does try to up the stakes from the first two movies, because Art kills children in this sequence. That is something he did in All Hallows Eve, but in the Terrifier series proper, this is the first time. It tells you he's back and meaner than ever, and it's done tastefully. You don't actually see anything. Well, that's not entirely true, but you only see the aftermath. Of course, mileage will vary on what you consider fair to put on screen. For me, it mainly crosses the line when you actually see it happen. That's why I didn't enjoy a particular segment in VHS Halloween. Something about kids begging for their lives just doesn't do it for me. According to my brother Alun on the short-lived, but I want to bring it back one day, One Take Podcast, the scariest part of this sequence, look how hard that cookie is. No gooiness at all. It's terrible. Cut to 5 years prior. Sienna has just beheaded Art the Clown, but evil is not yet vanquished. Remember at the end of Terrifier, Art is killed, but then a mysterious force brings him back to life. That same force takes the form of the little pale girl in Terrifier 2. At the end of the movie, she takes his head and runs off with it. Then she possesses Victoria Hayes, the now disfigured sole survivor of the Miles County Massacre from the first movie. You can tell she's possessed because she gets the same glowing eyes as the little pale girl. Now, I can't show her face because this is YouTube, so editor, please be very liberal with the blurring, even if her face is literally just a blur with one glowing eye. Anyway, blurry face over here gives birth to a fresh, living Art the Clown head, and as a cop investigates the crime scene underneath the Terrifier ride, Art's headless body springs back to life. The cop shoots him, but unless you attack Art with the magic sword from Terrifier 2, weapons are useless against him. He kills the cop. So now, Art's head and body are alive again. The two just need to join forces. One reason I love horror is that I love pushing the boundaries of imagination, and it is the genre where filmmakers tend to let themselves go wild. This is such a bizarre scenario to watch, and we've seen this gag before, a headless body stumbling around looking for its head, but usually it's done as a joke, often bloodlessly in shows or movies for younger audiences. To see Leone execute it with the requisite gore and with a totally straight face is so bizarre and awesome. You also don't skip a beat. There's a whole process to Art making his way to Victoria. He has to get on the subway. He uses the cop's decapitated head as a woefully unconvincing disguise. Like, nothing to see here. My head might be a little lopsided and dead, but I'm just a normal clown. I personally love a slower pace where a movie emphasizes the details. It makes the world feel more real and grounded, which makes the fantastical and horrific elements more impactful. Speaking of which, at the institution, the orderly, played by Chris Jericho, finds Art's head chewing on his colleague, while Victoria... Honestly, I can't tell exactly what she's doing. My interpretation of what is before my eyes is that as Art's head eats the lady, because he doesn't have a body, whatever he consumes just goes through the umbilical cord, and Victoria is slurping whatever comes out the other side. Like in Art the Clown flesh straw. I promise to never use that phrase again. It might have just gotten me demonetized. Upon discovering this bizarre scene, Jericho turns to see Art's body down the hall waving at him. Together, Victoria and Art rip his head apart. Chris Jericho, by the way, ended up in this movie because Leone heard he was a fan. Jericho was talking about it on his podcast, so the director reached out and Jericho was like, I would love to be in your movie. So, I would like to say, I'm also a big fan of these movies. Just putting that out there. With Art's head reattached, he and Vicky find a new home, an old, dilapidated house. The evil in possession of Vicky's body mocks her in the mirror before breaking it and picking up one of its shards. She lays in a dirty old tub and uses that piece of broken mirror to slice the wrists of the body she resides in. As for Art, he finds an old rocking chair in the attic where he will sit and stare with eyes wide open for the next 5 years. This movie, like Terrifier 2, gives Art a companion, though in this edition that companion is corporeal, the possessed Victoria, and this one is a lot more vocal. I don't mind it, but I think I was more a fan of the totally silent Art and his mostly silent companion in 2. These movies succeed by bringing unique elements into the familiar slasher formula. To me, Art represents this great remix. The mysterious silence of Michael Myers with the fun of Freddy Krueger. Now the Victoria figure feels a lot more familiar. If you've seen The Exorcist or Evil Dead movies or any number of other possession movies, you've seen demons talk through people just like this.
He used to be so hot.
On the other hand, I am still fascinated by the mind of Art the Clown. The fact that he could sit in a chair and stare at nothing for 5 years, still enough to be covered in cobwebs once he's eventually found. I love that idea, and it furthers the sense that he is alien and unknown, despite the risk of overexposure after 3 full movies and those shorts. This is also a reference to Black Christmas, where the deranged killer puts the body of one of his victims in a rocking chair. So the rest of the movie, we periodically cut back to that corpse, still on that chair. 5 years later, present day, Sienna's uncle picks her up from the Sunny Valley Treatment and Recovery Center, where the receptionist is played by Marie Mazur, star of the original Terrifier short. Sienna's uncle warns her that she's going to have her hands full with Gabby, her cousin who looks up to her more than ever, and true to his word, the reunion is a tearful one. Gabby could not be happier to have her older cousin back. Aunt Jess is happy to have her back too, though Sienna is also a reminder of Barbara, Jess's younger sister, Sienna's mother, who was killed by the psychotic clown. It's always challenging to bring the main character back for a slasher sequel. Often the villains themselves become quasi-main characters. The attraction of Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street sequels are mainly Voorhees and Krueger, but Terrifier brings both back, the hero and the villain, but manages to keep things fresh by evolving both. Sienna is not the same character she was in Terrifier 2. She's genuinely affected by what she went through, her brother too, and thematically, what better way to highlight that than by setting the movie during Christmas? Leone's whole approach is pushing every variable to its max, so the story isn't just Sienna trying to move on and enjoy life. It's Sienna trying to move on and enjoy life during one of the biggest holidays of the year, where things should be joyful and all about family. At this time, more than any other, the contrast is drawn between her old life and her new reality, trying to move on from a nightmare and trying to feel normal. And that is where I take issue with people downplaying the story of these movies. Even defenders of Terrifier will besmirch the movies like, look, you're not watching them for the story. It's just dumb, gory fun. Personally, I'm watching for both. I'm a fan of the movie, maybe the biggest fan, a bigger fan than Chris Jericho. Someone tell Leone. At Art and Vicky's home, Ironside Demolition arrives. A couple of workers inspect the place and happen upon the 2 residents who have not moved in half a decade. That explains the cobwebs on Art and the disgusting state of Vicky and her tub. The human contact wakes them up, and they proceed to brutally murder their visitors. The set design is amazing here. Vicky and her tub especially are a level of disgusting I never thought possible. This place looks like one of those crime scenes that went undiscovered for way too long, the kind you'd see in the movie Seven. And now that crime scene is coming to undead life to murder these poor workers. It's also worth noting that as Art peels the skin off one of their heads, Vicky watches and pleasures herself with the same shard of broken mirror from 5 years ago. See? Aren't you glad I noted that? There's definitely a degree of Leone trying to one-up himself and satisfy the bloodlust of an audience looking for new, creative ways to mutilate the human body. During this scene, I remember the audience in my theater going crazy and having a great time. Terrifier 3 took off in a really weird, unexpected way. The first 2 were known in horror circles and kind of bubbling at the edge of mainstream pop culture, but this is when it broke through. demolishing Joker Folie à Deux at the box office. What a tragedy. This is also one area where the series starts to stray more toward the typical. Especially in the first Terrifier, there are very few characters, which almost creates less buffer for the main character. Think of your typical slasher with a final girl, where she's surrounded by friends and acquaintances. There are a lot of people for the villain to kill before he gets to her. But the less characters you have in a slasher, the less safety for the main character because there are fewer NPCs for the bad guy to get through before he gets to her. That definitely changes a bit in this movie. Art has a lot more tangential kills that, on one hand, feel more typical and the kills less impactful, but on the other hand, the movie is just dumb, gory fun, right? This allows more for that crowd. Don't worry, Damien, I know you gotta throw this stuff in there to please the average moviegoers, and you'll keep putting the character development and arcs and the pathos and stuff in there for me. Art in Vicky's Awakening is intercut with Sienna and Gabby at home. Sienna finds a photo of her as a child with her father before the tumor and the abuse. That father, by the way, played by Jason Patric, star of The Lost Boys. Flashback, he shares with a young Sienna some of his art. More pictures of his comic book hero, Blaster Man. She reminds him of his promise to draw a girl who could be a superhero. She's disappointed when he promises he'll get to it soon. Then he reveals, as though he just remembered, he did draw something for her after all. Sienna is disrupted from her reminiscing when Gabby finds her journal and reads from it. I woke up back in the Clown Cafe, encased in glass, my lungs filled with ice water. This wasn't a dream or a hallucination. Sienna pulls the journal from her, makes her promise not to read it again. The Terrifier movies have a lore and mythology behind them, hinted at in Terrifier 2, largely spelled out on the Blu-ray commentary by Leone. It's actually pretty hilarious. At the end of the commentary track, Leone is like, well, I probably shouldn't have said a lot of that because I'm kind of spoiling the third movie.
I mean, I probably shouldn't have even said half the things I said in this commentary.
And it's true. A lot of what he says gets more revealed in this movie. Anyway, one thing I get sick of in horror movies is the character who strolls in and explains the mythology. You are cursed by Bagul. Here's the only thing you can do to escape. You can tell Leone is trying to be more creative in how the little bits of lore are dealt out. Here's a small example. Sienna has figured out some of it and written it in a diary, something you can definitely imagine a person doing in recovery. The lore is that what we saw in the last movie, her drowning in the Clown Cafe, was real in some sense, not a dream. The commentary track reveals it's essentially hell. Her personalized hell was going to be drowning repeatedly for eternity in the Clown Cafe. One thing you might have noticed earlier is that when the cop inspects the crime scene, he finds a shallow grave, an indication that when Sienna fell down that hole, she didn't literally fall into the Clown Cafe. She fell into a ditch and died, which sent her spirit or whatever to that personal hell until she comes back to life. I like how in this case we get that little glimpse of lore, but it isn't pure exposition because it's packaged with an emotional component too. Gabby reads the excerpt out loud, and you can feel how it hurts for Sienna to remember, and it's a violation of her privacy. It risks souring the warm reunion between them. Sienna and her family sit down for Chinese food. She tries her best to ignore that voice asking her to pass the rice. Pass the rice, please! They don't like to be ignored. They slam on the table and demand Sienna's attention. So finally, she looks. It's her friend Brooke, the one brutally murdered by Art at that ride at the carnival, the Terrifier. She accuses Sienna of getting her killed along with everyone else, because it was Sienna and Jonathan who led Art right to them. Sienna continues to ignore this ghost hallucination, or whatever it is that her various medications have failed to subdue, until she can't take it and excuses herself from the table. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, my favorite thing in horror, is when something feels off, and the filmmaker just allows you to notice it. I remember my first time watching, I hear that voice, "Can you pass the rice?" I didn't think anything of it, then I heard it again, and by process of elimination, I was like, Who the hell is saying that? Leone makes sure to show us all three of them, Gabby, Sienna, and Aunt Jess, so I realized there's an extra voice here. And then what would have been a simple jump scare if not for the great build-up.
If you don't pass the rice, I'm not gonna leave. You know, I'm dead because of you, okay?
It's an unusually gory and physically present ghost, one that bulldozes her way into the scene, distracts you from present reality, the same way it distracts Sienna. And it isn't just a scare, but a manifestation of Sienna's trauma and survivor's guilt. More of that dumb, gory fun. What about Sienna's brother? Jonathan is in college, doing his best to move on. Not helping matters is his roommate's girlfriend, Mia, who would love to have him on her true crime podcast. Their Miles County Massacre episodes do great numbers. He gets a call from his older sister. She's just calling to check in and tell him she's excited to see him soon at Aunt Jess's. This is where we see how both characters have evolved. In the previous movie, Jonathan was the believer, the one who wanted to talk about the clown and Sienna's role in a grand conflict between good and evil. Now those roles have reversed. He doesn't want to talk about or acknowledge any of those things. He wants to pretend it's over and move on, making this podcast character the worst person he could be around. When Sienna calls, she doesn't try to bring those things up, but through the editing and the performances by Lauren Lavera and Elliot Fulham, you can feel the unspoken thing, that she wants to bring it up and talk about it, and he doesn't want her to, so she holds back, which is especially sad considering he's the only one still alive who went through any of this with her. So he's the only one she can really talk to. Back at the residence of Art and Vicky, the clown is preparing some new weapons. The canister of liquid nitrogen in particular excites him, especially when he tests it on a rat, freezes it solid, and breaks it to pieces on the table. Look how excited he is. You believe that he cannot wait to use that on a person. And it's a great preview of the dangers ahead. It tells us, look what horrors await your beloved characters. Also, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I love the score by Paul Wiley in these movies, especially because most of the music is made available to creators for licensing on YouTube, so I can actually play some without worries of a copyright claim. So in this scene, Hemorrhage is playing, and just listen to it. It's so strange and otherworldly, it adds to that sense that you aren't just watching a couple of maniacs gather weapons, you feel an evil, supernatural presence. I'm also just a sucker for synth when used well, and especially when paired with horror, it creates the perfect eerie vibe. Now, more exciting than Art's new arsenal, when he goes for a stroll, and through the window of a bar, spots Santa Claus himself. He can't believe his eyes. The red outfit, the gut, he even tugs on the beard, and yes, it's real. This is the Santa Claus. Despite the clown's bizarre and annoying ways, Santa, the bartender, and the other barfly, played by Clint Howard, are extraordinarily patient with him. Santa even lets him sit on his lap. Though when Art spits his drink in Santa's face and relieves himself on his leg, that patience officially runs out. Art doesn't appreciate the commotion, so he shoots the bartender and Clint Howard dead, ties up Santa, gives him the liquid nitrogen treatment, the hammer treatment, and once St. Nick's face is frozen solid, he smashes it with a hammer, breaking off the beard and taking it as a souvenir, which he'll wear for most of the remainder of the movie. I guess he took Santa's advice quite seriously.
If Santa doesn't have a real beard, he's not a real Santa Claus.
If you split this franchise into the best horror scenes and the best horror comedy scenes, this is number one for me on the horror comedy side. The contrast of one of the most evil beings in existence, that excited to see a mall Santa, the same way a 5-year-old would be excited. The tension of that Santa genuinely trying to be nice, while this clown keeps pushing his limits of patience, honking the horn, spitting the drink, urinating. Clint Howard and Daniel Roebuck as Santa do such a great job playing off Thornton's insanity too.
What the fuck are you doing?
I'll peed on him!
We don't know these characters, so they could just be fodder for the killer, but in place of real, impactful deaths, Leone has some fun. Not just check out these murder effects, but it's a genuinely funny scene, and those laughs make the diversion worthwhile. Also, the effects are insane. On one end of horror is suggestion, leaving the worst stuff to the imagination. The other end is finding creative ways to show you stuff you never could have imagined. Santa's frozen and shattered face, still alive, screaming with one eye flitting around, while a psychotic clown rips his beard off. Well, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it before. I mean, who hasn't? Though when he follows up by grabbing the carrot off a snowman's nose and sticking it onto Santa's frozen and destroyed face, that's a creative touch even I hadn't imagined. These deaths are also the most disturbing when you're like, I can't believe that person is still alive. The most disturbing example probably being Allie in Terrifier 2. Before that, it was Vicky in 1, when the cops find Art eating her face and then you realize, oh damn, she's actually still alive. One thing I've noticed too is whenever Art uses a gun, he looks more grim than ever. He doesn't laugh or enjoy the kills the way he usually does, and I think that's because he only pulls the gun out when he feels like he needs to, out of self-preservation. When it's him versus 3 grown men, he feels like he has no choice. Then instead of the fun, gory kills, he's forced to do something faster, cleaner, with less suffering. I love the detail that his face shows how disappointed he is with that compromise. I remember noticing the same thing in the first Terrifier, the first time we see him pull out the gun. Back home, Sienna writes in her diary, "First day back at Aunt Jessica's in almost 10 years, Brooke was there to greet me, and she looks over a letter Jonathan had sent her while she was away. Sienna, we have to destroy the little girl before it's too late. Destroy her because she's inhuman, a demon. Sometimes demons try to break into our world, only they can't do it alone. They have to choose a vessel, someone recently deceased who functions as a bridge between worlds, but not just anyone. Someone sinister, depraved, the worst kind of evil, like a serial killer. If a demon enters this world in the flesh, a counterpart must be appointed to stop it from becoming too powerful. It's you, Sienna. As long as you're alive, they are vulnerable." You don't have to pause and read it. Later, Sienna will quote it back to Jonathan out loud. I'll admit it's a little exposition-y to spell it all out like this, but it claws back points thanks to the current dynamic between Sienna and her brother. The letter is from the old Jonathan, so discussing it with him will require getting past his new head in the sand, I just want to move on attitude. So it's a bit of exposition, but it comes with some fun, emotional complexity. In terms of the mythology, Leone spelled out some of this on the Terrifier 2 commentary. In her Clown Cafe dream sequence, where she survives an encounter with Art, that was actually a divine test by the good force, selecting a counterpart to the evil. She passes the test, and so that force imbues her sword with power that can be used against the evil. Jonathan's letter tells us that Art kind of passed his own sort of test. In Terrifier 1, presumably he was just a normal human serial killer, the kind of evil Jonathan describes, and he showed himself to be depraved enough he could make a fine vessel for a demon, so he's resurrected and becomes that vessel at the end of the movie. It all kind of reminds me of It, where the movies hint at lore which is much deeper in the books, where It is this ancient evil deity that has a good counterpart, the turtle. The next day, Sienna and Gabby go Christmas shopping, when a song plays over the intercom, a familiar song. Come on by the Clown Cafe, and a strange Santa walks by wearing a Santa mask. Somehow, Sienna knows it's him, the clown. The blood splatter on his gloves when he waves at her is also kind of a dead giveaway. She doesn't want anyone to think she's crazy, so she keeps quiet. I love how the Clown Cafe song perfectly captures the Art the Clown vibe. Playful, but also grating and weird. Bringing it back is a great way to put us in Sienna's shoes, allowing us to feel Art's presence without blatantly showing him. She meets up with Jonathan. She asks him to come to Aunt Jess's tonight. Why wait? But he has a Christmas party to go to. A lie. He is invited to one, but he has no plans on going. Before they can talk much longer, his roommate and Miss True Crime podcast show up. She fangirls over Sienna, who explodes on her.
Sienna, can't you act like a human being for one
fucking second?
After that, Sienna and Jonathan talk alone. He wants to believe it's all over. They cut the damn clown's head off. She tries reading his own letter back to him. He at least hears her out. She realizes she has to go back to the Terrifier where she left that sword, the only thing that can actually hurt this evil. And of course, the truth is, she isn't crazy. She did see Art at the mall. In fact, right about now, he's taking the place of the mall Santa. He's handing out gifts to all the little children, including a particular box with a particularly explosive gift inside it. The bomb kills 5 and puts 6 in critical condition, which furthers the theme from the opening sequence. No one is safe in this movie, not even the kids at the mall excited to see Santa. Though it plays it so over the top, you don't take it too seriously, and it's such an insane scenario. It feels like one of those scenes you'd see in a bizarre 80s horror and still be talking about today. You know that movie where the clown Santa blows up all those kids at the mall with explosive gifts? And when it happens, it comes as a shock. It almost recreates the initial surprise of seeing the gun in Terrifier 1. You don't expect Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers to pull out a pistol, and you definitely don't expect them to rig up explosives, take the time to package them up in wrapping paper, and hand them out at the mall. Jonathan, upset by his meeting with Sienna, pops some antidepressants, trashes his room, thinks about texting his aunt to warn her that Sienna is melting down, but instead just crashes on the bed. Meanwhile, Sienna returns home with that sword, hidden in a gift box. She places it under the tree. This felt weirdly fast to me. Like, I appreciate how this movie takes its time and doesn't skip the details, but here we skip Sienna returning to the place where she thought she vanquished Art. Considering how traumatic a place that would be, it felt odd skipping it. Like, that could have been a good opportunity for Ghost Brooke to show up again where she was actually killed. Leone might also just be going for the element of surprise, so we aren't sure what's in the box. But, I mean, she said she's going to get the sword, she comes back with dirt on her hands, so it's pretty clearly telegraphed. I wish the screenplay was available because Leone mentioned cutting a lot to try and keep the runtime down, especially after Terrifier 2's nearly 2-hour, 20-minute runtime. But as a fan of longer, slower-paced movies, I wish he hadn't done that, and I'd love to see what was cut. Probably the right move to make this movie more marketable, but come on, Leone, we want the Gill cut of Terrifier 3. He also hasn't put out a commentary track for this, and his commentaries were really entertaining for the first two, so that's disappointing. Maybe he's just afraid he'll accidentally spoil Terrifier 4. That night, Gabby offers Sienna cereal, and she turns it down. Oh right, Gabby forgot. Sienna doesn't like cereal anymore. But wait, Sienna never told her that. She must have read it in the journal. Sienna is upset, and Gabby admits she read the whole thing. About how Sienna chopped off Art the Clown's head with a magic sword. Sienna claims none of this is true. Just part of me working through things, writing down my delusions. Art visits the frat house where preparations are being made for the big Christmas party. Jonathan's roommate Cole calls him and leaves a message to check if he's okay. I love how the frat guy actually turns out to be cool and genuinely caring for Jonathan. The stereotype used to be the jocks would be the jerks, but they've apparently been superseded by exploitative podcasters. Speaking of which, Mia only cares if Jonathan will agree to do the podcast. She wonders what is it like to stare that kind of evil right in the eyes, and soon she'll find out. Back home, Sienna overhears the news of what happened at the mall, where we can see that one of the bystanders being interviewed is played by Tom Savini, the FX artist who has come up in a few Month of Terror videos. He's the legendary makeup effects artist who worked on Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, and more. Seeing a documentary about him is partly what inspired Damien Leone himself to get into makeup effects. Seeing the news of what happened at the mall sends Sienna into a panic. She knew Art was there but didn't say anything. Now he's going to come for them. She knows it. They need to call Jonathan. So her uncle gives him a call. He's going to go pick him up and bring him home now. Meanwhile, Sienna sleeps, and Gabby does something she's known to do on Christmas Eve. Sneaks downstairs to peek at her presents. At the college, Mia and her boyfriend Cole are intimate in the shower. Art chainsaws them both to death, then makes a blood angel on the floor. Another one of those iconic moments. Like 20 years from now, I'm going to remember Art making that blood angel on the locker room floor. I'll also remember seeing what a chainsaw does to genitals. The mutilation is intercut with him making that blood angel, emphasizing how the two are one and the same to him. They're both just a lark. And it's all done with the backing of a beautiful new song. This one, I'm sorry, is not available for licensing. It's a Terrifier Christmas. The song was composed by John and Al Kaplan, who are known for this sort of parody music. They went viral in 2002 for Silence the Musical, a 9-song Silence of the Lambs musical. They did 24 Season 2, the musical, a series of Schwarzenegger-inspired musicals like Terminator 2, the opera, and Predator, the musical. Needless to say, they were the right guys for this assignment, and they nailed it. These are also the last NPC kills in the movie before things get serious and there's more humor. I love while Mia and Cole are talking. She calls Art the most famous serial killer since Jack the Ripper, with no idea Art himself is listening in, and does this kind of "ah shucks" gesture. But he's disappointed at the next turn the conversation takes.
You sound like you want to fuck him.
I don't want to fuck him.
Anyway, killing people in the shower is a slasher staple. Art had to do it, and do it harder than any that came before. Jonathan's uncle arrives to pick him up, but he can't find the boy. And Jonathan sounds strange on the phone. He isn't where he said he'd be. He doesn't sound like himself, and there's some interference on the line. And my heart sinks at that moment. This movie has had a lot of fun, a lot of dark humor, but this is whiplash to reality. The slightest hint that something has happened to Jonathan, especially considering how strained his relationship has been with Sienna, and maybe now there was a chance at the two coming together, he was going to come home. Here, they don't have to tell us something is wrong. The last movie trained us to know that evil can mimic a person's voice on the phone. It's past the rice all over again, the dawning realization that something is wrong. As Sienna sleeps, she dreams of her father, of the drawing he made of the warrior angel, the one Sienna embodied to kill Art the Clown once before. As her father hands her the drawing, he freezes up and shakes as though some force is reaching into him. Images flash. Sienna drowning in the clown cafe. Sienna fighting Art. The young Sienna hears the sound of metalworks. Her father tells her to remember he will always be with her. Sienna, now older, her current self, looks toward the sound and sees a strange blacksmith working on something, held on a metal leash by a living statue of Mary. Leone has said he intends on exploring Art the Clown's backstory in Terrifier 4. I can already hear the complaints. He won't be scary anymore if you explain his origins. Hold on. He said he's going to do it in a Lynchian way. I mentioned this in my It Chapter 2 review. Explaining the origins can spoil the fun, like I think it did to an extent in that movie. But look at Twin Peaks The Return, Episode 8, where Lynch dove into the origins of an evil force, but in a really surreal way, where you get a sense and a feeling for the backstory, but can't quite grasp it. I think this moment is a hint at what's to come in the next movie, and a clue that those origins won't be entirely literal. They will be nightmarish, symbolic, and surreal. To me, that's the way to have your cake and eat it too. Provide hints around an origin without being overly literal, and without totally eradicating that sense of unknown terrors. Now, what did we actually see in the flashback? We knew from the last movie that Sienna's father was in touch with the good force that counteracts the evil. I assume when he freezes up is when it's reaching out and giving him visions of what's to come. And how about the blacksmith thing? Mother Mary definitely calls to mind the good force, and the blacksmith calls to mind the weapons they forged to fight evil. But that blacksmith looks evil, and he's on a chain, so maybe we're getting a hint that it isn't all black and white. Maybe the side of good is borrowing something from the darkness to make weapons capable of fighting it. Maybe in Terrifier 4, we'll see some of the complexities of this bizarre Lynchian battle between cosmic forces, and I can't wait. Sienna wakes up to find hell waiting for her downstairs. Art and Vicky. They've already beheaded her uncle and used his head in place of a star on their Christmas tree. They've pinned his body to the wall with his entrails spilling out. She fights with Art, but ends up unconscious and wakes up tied to a chair across from her aunt, also tied up, with a bloody gift wrapped in newspaper between them. Art uses her uncle's entrails to decorate the tree, and Vicky removes the tape from Aunt Jess's mouth. "Where is my daughter?"
I thought you'd never ask.
Vicky unwraps that gift to reveal a recently procured skull, with rats still picking at the flesh. Art and Vicky kill Sienna's aunt in brutally creative fashion. They force a glass tube into her mouth, then send rats scurrying into her throat, motivated by some fire from Art's torch. They cut her throat and rats spill out of it. Once she's dead, Vicky places a crown of thorns upon Sienna's head, making her bleed. And Vicky makes a confession. That skull on the table does not belong to Gabby. In fact, she's still alive. Once Art puts Jonathan's glasses on that skull, Sienna knows her brother is dead. There's a game to horror and suspense. You're trying to make the audience tense and draw that out as long as you can. There are a lot of risks that come with that. You don't want to bore people waiting for something to happen, especially risky in a sequence like this that all takes place in one enclosed space, this room. But in this sequence, Leone finds enough twists and reveals, like the who's dead moment. Gabby? No, thank God. Oh wait, Jonathan's dead. There's the morbid curiosity. We know this is the climax, so Art has to unleash his worst tricks yet. What does he have left in his arsenal that we haven't seen? A rat tube. The other risk is stretching credulity, especially when a villain gets the hero tied up in a chair. Why don't they just kill them? But this movie has an explanation. They aren't trying to kill her. They're trying to mentally break her down to the point where the evil force can possess her the way it possessed Vicky. This is yet another example where I really feel like Leone has studied the art of horror, and he's thought of everything to avoid all the pitfalls. So this scene, which isn't over yet, is about half an hour of pure stress and tension, which is almost even more effective thanks to all the fun that came before. It lulls you into a false sense of security. Oh, after Terrifier 2, Leone is just letting loose, having a good time. Then you get punched in the face with this finale. Now, maybe Sienna has lost enough. Maybe the evil inside Vicky can take Sienna's body as a vessel, but she fights back. She hasn't been broken enough yet. So they'll have to take the only thing she has left, Gabby. But first, Gabby begs, why not let Sienna open my Christmas present first? Vicky finds that idea swell. Art smashes Sienna's hands with his mallet and frees her restraints so she can open the gift herself. Of course, it's the sword. Gabby read about it in her diary, and she peeked at the gifts earlier this evening, so she knew it was in there and what it's capable of. Sienna slices Art's throat and throws the sword into Vicky's chest, then cuts off her head. But Art isn't finished yet. They end up in a sword versus chainsaw fight that ends with Art pinned against the wall, almost dead. And Sienna would love to finish the job, except more important than killing Art is saving Gabby, who right now is hanging off the edge of a hell portal, apparently melted into the floor by Vicky's demonic blood. Makes sense? So a choice. Kill the clown or save Gabby. No choice at all. Sienna leaves the clown and tries to save her by the only logical choice, holding the sharp end of her sword and offering Gabby the handle. The little girl tries to reach it, but slips and falls along with the sword. To top off the bad news, Art is gone, having apparently survived his many wounds. Sienna removes her crown and looks at her hands. They heal by that magic force, and Sienna promises to find Gabby. As for Art, he gets on a bus and sits across from a woman reading a book called The Ninth Circle, a reference to the short film which introduced Art the Clown. And the author's name is Rosemary Castevet, seems to be a reference to Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary, obviously the name of the main character, and Castevet is the last name of the neighbor in that movie. And we end with another performance of It's a Terrifier Christmas. Yeah, I love this series, and it's the type of movie where you can feel the creative energy and passion behind the production. There's fantastic setup for a sequel here at the end. So far, the franchise has transformed itself 3 times into 3 unique entries that all add something new while honoring the core idea. And I have no doubt that trend will continue with 4. If Sienna is going to try and get Gabby back, will that require her to travel to some other dimension? Are we going to see hell or wherever that evil force lives? Will Leone pull off the Lynchian vibes he talked about? Personally, I cannot wait to find out. Also, my business email is on my channel page. Leone, you can have your people reach out to my people, and I'm sure we can work something out. Month of Terror continues tomorrow with Screamboat.